I currently have 11 unique NPCs and 0 replayability. It's not good. But what if instead I could create over 24 billion unique combinations? Now, that is enough. But I'm just a small indie studio consisting of myself and a handful of fish, so how can we achieve this? Well, we're gonna utilize procedural generation and with a lot of help from a Synty Asset pack. But just adding more variety doesn't make the game more fun. So while I was focusing on the NPC's appearance, I also completely overhauled their AI. Let's go. So why do we even need so many unique looking NPCs? Well, Tavern Team is a game I've been working on where you manage a medieval tavern with your friends. This includes making preparations for the night's shifts, cooking dishes, serving customers, etc. So if it's the same 11 customers that constantly show up, it's lame, it sucks, and every night feels like you're playing Overwatch 2.
Same game.
Now what isn't lame is piercing together 149 unique models to dramatically increase the diversity and variety of the customers that arrive. I began by creating a cosmetic slot, underneath which would be several unique clothing sets. I did these for my character's chest, legs, and arms. When the customer spawns, we set a randomly selected child object of each slot active, and then we delete the rest. At this point, I had Baldy looking pretty fresh, but lacking any sort of hair, I am terrified of this horde of Cailloux I've assembled. I immediately set to work resolving this host of whiny little brats by implementing some holder slot architecture just as the cosmetics, but this time to the head, hairstyle, eyebrows, and facial hair. I also created a list of hair colors to randomly select from. I'm using the modular fantasy hero creator from Synty for this. Psst, it's literally like 50% off once a month. And it works really well for my use case. You can always use a different asset, or if you can make do with a smaller amount of content, create all of it yourself by hand. But for how detailed these are, to try to create these myself would take several months and I'd wind up looking way worse. I do, believe it or not, want to finish this game before hell freezes over, so this is a pretty good solution for me. At this point, I was almost able to fully generate what passed for the population of a medieval town. I made a few more tweaks, such as adding a bunch of skin tones, playing around a bit with the scale of the model to display both height and weight, along with adding a 4th cosmetic slot to hold items such as swords, pouches, satchels, evil mutant pig heads, bags, you know, the usual stuff. I then went one step further and created a second entire class of customers that were dressed as soldiers. These would spawn in groups as if a bunch of cannon fodder were enjoying their night off. I wasn't able to use much of the armor from the Synty pack for the townsfolk, so I'm glad I got to scratch that itch here. After this, I refactored the entire system to use procedural generation, and I'm sure you've heard that buzzword before, so let me wildly oversimplify in 5 seconds. First, I'm taking a number, I'm going to call it the seed, and plugging it into an algebra equation with a bunch of other variables such as frequency, amplitude, this big ass word that I can't pronounce, and using this to generate a value between 0 and 1. Now, based on that value, I'm going to set a specific game object active. We're going to divide the range of answers between the amount of child objects of our holder. So if, let's say, there's 2 possible outcomes, we'll divide it between 0 and 0.5 and 0.5 and 1. And if it lands in that first half, the first one will get set active. If it lands in the second half, the second one will get set active. This holds true regardless of the amount of children. So if there are 3 separate objects, we'll divide it by 0.33, then 0.33 to 0.66, then 0.66 to 1. Simple enough. And every time we plug the seed number into the equation, it's going to give us the same answer, allowing us to save all of the characteristics, all 14 of the unique values, with just one simple number. And if you want a more detailed explanation that uses noise maps to take this and apply it to generating 3D terrain, check out this really good video by Sebastian Lague. So now that we have... Hey man, I'm happy for you, but who asked? I mean, this kind of just sounds like random.range, but with extra steps. What's the point of it all? Now, that's actually a really good question. Steven from Isto Inc. recently did a video talking about this. He was implementing it in his own game, Atrio, which is a sick sort of hybrid between Factorio and Don't Starve.
What happened in No Man's Sky, and how do we learn from their mistakes and add procedural generation into our game Atrio? Available in early access right now. Here's the lesson. Procedural generation isn't a game mechanic, it's a tool. The appeal of exploration in games isn't about more worlds or bigger universes, it's about more unique experiences.
Now we can use this generation of characters to create unique experiences, as it allows us to easily save the customer specifics and have them return as a regular. I redid the ale logic. Instead of the customer ordering a specific type of ale, they will now take any type you serve them. However, the quality of the ale is now a factor in whether or not the customer will order more, or if you truly impress them, they will be stored as a regular. Side note, I learned how to UV map models, so I was able to use unique meshes for all these barrels, but the same material on all three. Kinda cool, I guess. Side note over. Regulars are going to have unique gameplay logic, such as being twice as patient as normal customers while waiting for their drinks. I also redid the spawning logic to spawn a set amount of customers each night, with the regulars having a high chance to spawn as additional customers. Like the Notorious B.I.G. said, more customers, more money. They will show up night after night as long as you're able to serve them their order. If you fail to serve them, there is a small chance that they will lose their regular status and will find a better tavern to favor. Saving all of their characteristics as a single seed also makes transmitting this data across networks much easier, so the same clothes are displayed on the client since this is multiplayer, allegedly. Since we're overhauling the customers today, I updated their logic to discard the mugs as they leave the table. Also, I noticed that something was off about the tables, but I couldn't quite place it. So after looking at some examples of how taverns are portrayed in media, I noticed customers are much more crammed in and they sit much closer together. I realized that I had a scaling issue. Their feet didn't even touch the ground, but after I shrank the scale of the taverns and pushed them a little bit closer, I was much happier with the look. Now, it was time to get our generated customers working in the scene, and other than a quick soda popping cosplay contest, I got them all working as intended. I also redid the UI. It was looking a little messy, so I decreased the amount of objects. I still have the same progress bar functionality, it just looks a lot better now when they're in a large group. Speaking of groups, I completely redid the spawning logic for like the third time this video. So actually for 30 seconds I implemented functionality where customers would only sit with those of the same race, but I threw that out the window to implement groups. So in our fourth iteration of the spawning logic, you know how when you go out to a restaurant or bar, oftentimes you're with your friends? Well, customers now spawn in groups of 1 to 5 and will sit together at a table. They will prioritize a table where they can all fit. They will also patiently wait at that table until all their homies are finished, then they'll get up and leave together. Customers now have the ability to order another round at the table. Their table will display an indicator that another drink is needed. They discard their currently held mug and will accept a new one filled with ale. If they don't want another drink, they will simply leave. By the way, the reason why I'm working on customers right now is because I ran a poll in Discord and that's what people wanted to see, so if you want to influence Tavern Team, you can join the Discord, link down below. Now, depending on the amount of drinks consumed, they may have a little difficulty leaving. If you've made it this far, you might as well subscribe. Anyway, development of this game is rolling along. I'm very happy with all the progress on the customer overhaul today. Have a great rest of your day.